Good afternoon, officers, councillors, and welcome to the meeting of the Licensing and Protection Committee this afternoon in the ground floor meeting rooms in Pathfinder House. Today on Wednesday, the 19th March. Just a reminder that the meeting is being streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. And since we don't have individual microphones, please keep your vocal voice level high when you're speaking so that the central microphone. Thank you. Are there any apologies for absence, Scott?
Yes, Chair, we have an apology from Councillor Bowden.
Minutes of the previous meeting to be approved as correct for the minutes of the meeting of the Licensing and Protection Committee held on the 16th of October 2024. Are you all happy that some of the minutes is correct record? Yes, Chair. Good. Until the agenda, members' interest to receive from members declarations as to the political, pecuniary, other registrable and non-registrable interests in relation to the agenda item. Do you have any use to declare this afternoon, councillors? No. Agenda item 3, the corporate enforcement policy. Consider a report by the Public Protection Manager for which is appended a revised corporate enforcement policy for approval.
Thank you. Good afternoon all. I'm bringing forward today a revised corporate enforcement policy. So the policy was last approved in 2018 and following an audit last year of all enforcement activity across the district council, it was recommended that a revision of the policy would be appropriate. So in terms of the policy itself, it covers the service areas of public protection, which makes up community safety, covering antisocial behaviour, environmental crime and dog control, licensing, so animal licensing, personal premises and event licenses, hackney carriage and private hire regulation, environmental health, so food safety, pollution control, nuisance, health and safety and private sector housing, and then planning and development management. So you'll be aware that there are a number of services that sit outside of this policy. They have their own legislation that needs to be applied. So it just takes account of those services there. In terms of the policy, the idea is that it's broad in its presentation. In terms of each of the services themselves, they have their own processes and procedures that need to be followed in line with the legislation that they are applying. So the intention of the policy is to give an indication to residents and businesses in terms of the action that will be taken following a breach of legislation under one of those service areas. So in terms of variation from the previous policy, there isn't anything really significant. It just is taking account of what has happened over the last 7 years, the way that we do business, but also good practice from neighbouring authorities across the area as well as across the country. So basically the approach that will be taken by services is not necessarily enforcement as a last resort, but actually what we will look to do is follow the guidance of good enforcement and basically work with the person that has been alleged of a breach to try and find a resolution in the first instance. You'll hear from Georgia a bit later on about some public protection orders that we've recently had in place, and that is just one part of the legislation that we use as part of our enforcement activity. So I think it's just to say that this is the approach that we would like to take to enforcement. In terms of the individual services, they will continue to follow the procedures that they have in place. And much of that links to the scheme of delegation that you'll see an updated version of later on. That they're basically the headlines.
Councillors, do you have?
Sure. Will civil parking enforcement be included in this, or will it fall out with this?
It fall outside of this.
Your questions, councillors?
Just a comment, it's not exhaustive, but let's give a good overview of all the things we have our fingers in as well, all the fantastic work we do. So it was much more complicated than I expected. So a lot of documents, we have to have these things done. Thank you very much, by the way.
Yeah, many thanks. Further questions? So noting, as Corey said, there is an update and also taking account of equivalent corporate policies and other authorities and making sure we are aligned with aligned references. We'll recommend, therefore, to approve the revised corporate enforcement policy, to delegate authority to the head of planning, infrastructure and public protection to make minor editorial changes to the corporate enforcement policy, should this be deemed necessary. And thirdly, to delegate to the head of planning, infrastructure and public protection in consultation with the relevant executive councillors, amendments to operating procedures in light of changes resulting from revocations, amendments, or enactments of relevant statutory provisions, changes in statutory guidance, or practice. Committee recommends these recommendations.
Yes. Thank you.
Moving on to item 4, public space protection orders. Roger.
Yeah, hi, so I'll start with Amesbury first. So you'll be aware that the Amesbury Public Space Protection Order came into place in July 2024. Then we had another review back in October 2024, where the evidence indicated that the PSPA was having the desired effect that we wanted it to have. And then in January, we produced another report that identified there was 5 breaches within the October to December timeframe. So this will be a third review of the Amesbury PSPO. So in terms of breaches reported to HDC, we've had none in the months of January and February. Since the report was published, the police have come back with some information that they've had 1 report in the January and February timeframe. That was on the 20th of January. That still is under investigation at the moment, so we don't have an answer for that. But that is the only report that we've had in January to February of this year. We still have CCTV in the area, but I think also it's important to note, and that we want to reassure the community in Amesbury that obviously we are aware that the behaviours sort of associated with this PSPO, the reason why it's implemented in the first place, are typically tend to be lower in the winter months. Behaviours associated with street drinking, and so we are continuing to monitor the situation as the weather starts to get warmer, and we will monitor and enforce as necessary. That's all really in terms of the Amesbury one. The legal implications in terms of resource remains the same, and obviously it will remain in place until 2027. That was all really Amesbury one.
Thank you, Georgia. Councillors, questions on the Amesbury PSPA? Councillor Davis.
It's more of a comment than a question, is that I've been involved in this since the very start and had to meet on several occasions with some very concerned residents. I think their concerns were entirely reasonable. And when we said we were going to do this, I think they were very grateful. I think they were sceptical that it was going to be solve their problem. And with the caveat, you said that it's the winter months and summer will be more challenging. It seems to have had a real impact. I mean, both in terms of the amount of antisocial behaviour reported, but also the concerns that my emails inbox isn't so. Actually, one of the residents happened to be in the pub with me on Friday night. She was there and she didn't say anything about it. So I take that as a measure of how successful this has been. So let's hope. I mean, thank you. It's going to continue. How long is the camera going to be there for? Do we know?
We haven't got any confirmed timeframe yet. Obviously, it was initially funded for 6 months, but it's still running. We'll just review it in terms of demand, whether that's needed, and we'll make a decision based on that.
So I just think this is an excellent intervention by us, and I'm very grateful for all the hard work running around this as well. It's not just a question of sticking a camera up. There's lots of door knocking that I'm making people aware of it. And so I think it's so far, fingers crossed, touch wood, it's been a fantastic success. So
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions from councillors?
I think just to reinforce George's caveat that obviously it's winter weather and we need to be mindful of the fact that when the weather gets warmer and summer behaviours start to materialise, that it's a kept an eye on over that period. Thank you.
I will move on to Ramsey then. So the Ramsey PSPO came into place in November 2024. Again, we completed the report for this in January 2025. So this will be a second review of the Ramsey PSPO. So we have had one reported breach for Ramsey, which was on this is for the month of January and February. We have had one reported breach, which was on the 20th of February, where there were 2 individuals with a open vessel of alcohol. Police have sent us a witness statement, and we are in the process of issuing a fixed penalty notices to those individuals for that one. Again, CCTV is permanent in the Great White area, so that will remain as it is, and that's monitored by our CCTV department, which is obviously a crucial part of the enforcement of that too. Police continue to patrol the area where they are able to, where they've got the resource, but also our officers are also patrolling the area when needed, and obviously we're working together to enforce the PSPO. We've had really, really good feedback for the Ramsey PSPO. The town council have noticed a remarkable improvement in the behaviour, but again, similarly, are obviously apprehensive about the fact that we're approaching the warmer weather, and so again, the reassurance is needed that we will continue to monitor it as needed. And that was all for the Ramsey one.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Clark.
Not a question, but thank you very much for what you've done. Town council particularly grateful. I go up there every Thursday on business and it's completely changed. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Costello.
Yeah, I also live in Ramsey, and it has made a difference, a real difference to the centre for people who on the Great White who go shopping, and it's been such an improvement. The only slight caveat I would have to that is that they are moving to other seating down by the dock. Yeah, they're down there, and also the Mews car park, which I think is actually under the.
Yeah, so that is covered as well, so that would be considered a breach, and just encourage the reporting of those behaviours in that area as well.
Yeah, I would say.
But we'll monitor to see if it's as well. Thank you.
Okay then.
Thank you, councillor. Storm.
Yes, I think it's very good. Both of them have been involved in as well. And I think it does send a clear message that we will put these protection orders in place and we will listen to the public. And I think it's a very, very good piece of work, which other councillors and taken since well done. It's nice to be able to report something back very positive to the residents, I think, as well.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah. Just know the Ramsey CCTV is a buildings installation.
Yes, yeah.
I think it's worth noting also that this is only possible with the support and consent of the police as well. Who, there's other schemes we'd like to have done in the past, but we haven't been able to. And so I'm very grateful to those guys for doing, because they're under resourced too, and we're trying to other places. Well, we talked about doing similar things in other places. We haven't been able to because they don't have the resources. So yeah, it requires their support. So I suppose all you guys. So just very grateful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Thank you.
It's a good partnership work, and it's that that's this works.
Excellent. Any other questions coming to councillors? Okay. So it concludes the discussion of the PSPOs. We will move on to the Licensing and Protection Committee scheme of delegation to officers. And this is a separate document which you will receive. And this is for Claudia.
Thank you. So back in January last year, we brought forward a revised scheme of delegation to officers. The reason being that we had had a number of title changes within the management structure. We've just been through a similar process, and you all know Clara, and Clara is the next day to observe and is our new head of public protection. So we've made some changes within the scheme of delegation to reflect basically the changes to post titles. So, for example, my post has changed its name, as have others within the scheme. We're very conscious that we make use of the legislation as much as possible. So, like with the PSPO, now that's been delegated to officers, we were able to consider the evidence presented to us, liaise with the police and make that decision. That's just one example of where delegations down to officers mean that things can happen quite quickly rather than having to go through cycles of meetings. So the purpose of this report is just purely to update post titles to make sure that it is compliant when we're presenting documents, for example, within court, that we're not challenged around incorrections within the report.
Thank you, Claudia. Any questions on this item, councillors?
Just the same comment again as previously, it just illustrates the incredible work that you guys do as well. And it's when I was first appointed to this portfolio, I had no comprehension of what you did, all the stuff you did, and it's lovely to see. And I think that residents should be more aware exactly of what, I always thought antisocial behaviour, for example, is just the role of the police, but it's fantastic that you do all of these things, and I think we should be celebrating those much more.
I think we agree. I mean, it is very important, as you say, Claudia, that the document reflects the roles of people, so that it's kind of clear and accurate to where these responsibilities lie in this context. So if there are no further questions, we move on to recommendations. The Licensing and Protection Committee is recommended to approve the scheme of delegation from Licensing and Protection Committee with officers. That the Public Protection Manager is authorised to make minor editorial changes, which by definition make no change to the powers of delegations. That the Public Protection Manager, in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Licensing and Protection Committee, be authorised to make changes as a result of revocations, amendments, or enactments of relevant statutory provisions. And fourthly, that the Public Protection Manager be authorised to appoint such civically qualified officers as deemed appropriate to exercise those duties delegated to them. Can I have a show of hands those who are happy to support the recommendation, please? One, two, three. Thank you. Is that unanimous? Any extensions or anybody else? That's fine. Moving on to item 6, the suspension and revocation of hackney carriage and private hire licences. To consider a report on actions taken under the powers delegated by the Licensing Protection Committee. This is for Michelle.
Lovely, thank you, Chair. As you know, this is a standard report that I bring to every meeting. Because we missed the January meeting, I've broken it down into two parts. So under item number 2, you've noticed that time period obviously is between October and the end of December. I won't go through them all obviously individually line by line, but to give you a breakdown, as I've done a summary and sort of altered the report slightly from previous. So during that period, we took action against 6 drivers, 14 vehicles, and 1 operator. Number of issues in there, as you can see, some have come forward obviously to yourselves as a subcommittee, and you've made the relevant decisions. And obviously then some have come to delegated authority, which obviously sits with myself and Claudia to make those decisions. Some are Where a vehicle is obviously suspended and that's due to an accident, a lot of the times that's to do with insurance companies. They need the vehicle to be suspended, so obviously then issue a replacement vehicle. So I've tried to break it down. As I've always said, I can't put sort of detail, if you like, on the report, further detail, but obviously if anybody wants to speak to me after about that, I'm more than happy to discuss individual ones. Going forward at 2.2, you can see then I've broken down from obviously January to 1st of March. And you'll notice obviously within the summary that we've not taken action at the moment against any drivers for that period, but we have taken action on 16 vehicles and 1 operator. Which then, looking back obviously to the previous period, you'll notice that's more vehicles. One of the reasons for that is that we was previously suspending a vehicle if it had dangerous defects, so obviously couldn't be driven away. That's obviously changed, and we've now suspended a vehicle for major defects as well, because major defects meant that they could still drive the vehicle away. If it had an MOT on it, they could still carry on driving it. We felt from the safety aspect that, that we didn't want that vehicle being driven away, being driven obviously for the purposes of hackney carriage, private hire. So therefore we want to, put that into play, that we will then obviously suspend that plate. That's obviously had a bit of a knock-on effect in terms of the numbers of vehicles that we've suspended. When we say dangerous defects, major defects, it's not everything. What we're looking at is the safety aspect. So tyres, brakes, suspension, steering. It's those types of things that we felt was a safety aspect, that we don't want vehicles being licensed by us on the road carrying passengers. So therefore we'll obviously suspend that plate until such time as obviously the vehicle's had its repair, and then we'll reissue the plate back to it. So yeah, no issues with that. As I say, so that's why you probably look at that. I think there's more vehicles obviously during that sort of first 2-3 month period obviously of the year. You'll also remember obviously from the new policy that we brought in last year, penalty points is now does exist within our taxi policy. And again, I've sort of done a breakdown there for you of kind of the types of points that have been issued. And obviously, yeah, for what reasons and the amount that we've issued. Again, some of those things are where they failed obviously to notify us of, for example, SP30, which obviously is a speeding offence. Some of it may be that they've turned up with a dangerous vehicle, with dangerous defects on a vehicle that we just think is not suitable. It means from our perspective that they're obviously not doing the vehicle checks, because why would you present your vehicle in that state? So again, it's about us just trying to look at that and make sure we've got control of the vehicles. We want to make sure obviously all the vehicles that we license are safe and suitable to be on the road. And then moving down obviously to item number 4.1, that's just to update to say that we have got a driver that was obviously refused a licence by us. It went to its sort of first hearing in January this year, and there's obviously a full hearing for that to take place in May at the Magistrates Court. So obviously I'll be able to update you hopefully at the next meeting, get delayed again, of the outcome of that one. Yeah, happy to take any.
I can ask a question.
Thank you.
You mentioned MOT, so this taxis can get MOTs, and yet 2 minutes later you find a major default. Is there any comeback on the person who issued the MOT?
Yeah, so obviously if we're finding that they've gone to had their MOT, and then they've gone for their compliance check, which is a replica of the MOT, but obviously then stand slightly above that. If it's going to fail the MOT, then obviously, yes, we will report that through. Obviously, it's not something we can take action on, but we can report it through to DVSA, and we do that. So we've had, I can say now, on 2 occasions. So yeah, obviously William's with me in the room. There was only one again this morning that we had. It went for an MOT, and then at a garage, whether it's compliance test happens. Yeah. So yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Cameron.
I think you answered the question was the same as about the MOT, to say how do you know that it's just got some defects? if they produce the MOT that you answered. Thank you.
Yeah, again, I think as the previous ones is more of a comment. I think it's a small world, taxi businesses, and I think word gets out. And if it's getting out, the HDC are going to come down if you've got a defect. I mean, and also I'm pleased to see about the points, because I was a bit concerned about mobile phone use. I mean, they're taxi drivers and they should know the rules, just the same as somebody who has to work in an operating theatre knows the rules. That's their job. So I'm very pleased because I think this does send out a clear message to the taxi drivers in our district. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Yes, do you top with points like we do in civil driving? Is there a maximum point so then they're automatically disqualified?
So it's not automatically disqualified. They top up, and then obviously after the totting up, they'll then be referred. That's what we called obviously to us to look at, and if we feel then we'll refer to the committee.
What are the points total be for that?
I'll have to just double check the policy on the top of my head. I think it's 12. William, 12.
1 year license is 6 points.
1 year license is
3 or 5 is 6.
So the man with 30 then, isn't there any chance?
So that's so yeah.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, it's on MOTs again. There is correspondence this week from Councillor Kerr, I think from St Ives and somebody at St Ives taxi drivers worried about the fact that we only have a single garage in Huntingdonshire which is able to give the taxi MOT certificates as well. And I think her concern is that leaves us rather vulnerable to that business perhaps going out of business.
Some agenda items to be based on this exact subject, and that's going to be discussed with
It helps you to understand that as well, because I kind of share her concerns. I wasn't aware of like I'm assuming that I wasn't aware of that previously.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to bring it forward to the next meeting, but just quickly, if I can clarify. So, in terms of a vehicle having an MOT, they can go to any MOT approved garage to get their MOT. It's their certificate of compliance that they need to have at the appointed garage.
So it will be helpful to have that at the next meeting.
Yeah. That's all. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? There's still one question which I probably should know the answer to. When we say fitting proper, what does that actually refer to?
Good question. There's actually no definitive answer to that in terms of in terms of legislation or the guidance. Probably would be if they update the legislation. Obviously, bearing in mind it's 76 Act, so it's fairly old legislation. But in terms of institute licensing, which obviously we're members of, they've defined that sort of more now in terms of safe and suitable. They tend to use the word, but again, there's no definition. It's about. I suppose the answer is: would you be happy with a particular driver driving your, family member, loved one around, at any time of the day or night in a vehicle? And if you'd be happy with that, then they're suitable to be a driver, and if they're not, then there's questions that we need to ask. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So I have one question. With the spread of Uber coming, we have no control over the Uber drivers at all. Do we have some?
No, so obviously Uber are licensed as a private hire operator, the same as any other operator. Uber are not licensed within Huntingdon District Council, but obviously they are licensed in neighbouring authorities. Yeah, and I believe South Council as well. There's obviously lots of Uber drivers. No, we've got no, if you like, powers over those particular drivers. However, obviously, if there is concerns about any particular driver's vehicles, then by all means that can be flagged up with us, and we can obviously report that through to the relevant authority. So, there is a duty on us to report that through. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Any further questions, Kathy? Done. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, license protection subcommittees. Received a summary of the meetings of the license protection subcommittees that have taken place since the last meeting of the committee. And you have on our agenda back a list of those meetings. Any questions, comments on meetings in question? Oh, this is one, yeah. Thank you very much, councillors. Okay, in that case, that's the last item on the agenda, so, meeting closed. Excellent. You couldn't stop recording. Committee meeting held in Pathfinder House on Wednesday, 19th of March 2025 at 2:30 p.m. Reminder that the meeting is being live streamed on the council's YouTube channel. Please keep your voice when you're speaking, keep your volume, your voice high enough so to be picked up by the one central microphone in the room. Right, do you have apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have an apology from Councillor Vance.
Okay, thank you. Item 1 minutes of the last meeting, who is the correct record minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of October 2024. Are you all happy with the assignment minutes of the correct record, councillors? Yes. Thank you. Also, 2 members' interest to receive from members to collect declarations as disposable, pecuniary, other registrable, and non-registrable interests in relation to any agenda item. Members have any interest to declare this afternoon?
No.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3, licensing committee scheme of delegation to officers to consider a report seeking approval of an updated scheme of delegation due to changes in the internal structure of the service. So there's a separate document provided to follow, and this is with that project.
Thank you. Extension.
Yeah, I'll do this one. So it's obviously exactly the same as the previous update on delegations. This one obviously covers the Licensing Act 2003, Gambling Act and Scrap Metal, just because it falls under 2 separate committees, which is why we take them separately. Again, there's been no change to the current scheme of delegations. It's just about the post holder having a change of job title, and in which case we've obviously updated those delegations. As I say, there's been no new ones added or anything taken away. So it's really just for an update on post holder details.
Thank you. So just to reiterate the benefit overview, it's not the biggest meetings, it's to do with the changes of roles and descriptions of officers, and to make sure they are aligned with, or the documents are aligned with those things of the organisation. Licensing committee is recommended to approve the scheme of delegation from licensing committee to officers. Secondly, the public protection manager be authorised to make minor editorial changes, which by definition make no changes to the powers of delegations. Thirdly, that the public protection manager, in consultation with the chair and vice chair of the licensing committee, be authorised to make changes as a result of revocations, amendments, or relatively relevant statutory provisions. And fourthly, that the public protection manager, with regards to Licensing Act 2023, Section 13(4)D, be authorised to appoint such suitably qualified officers as deemed appropriate to exercise those duties delegated to them. Councillors, can I take a vote please on these recommendations? All those in favour? Thank you. That's it. Moving on to item 4, licensing of subcommittees to consider a report by the Elections and Democratic Services Manager detailing the meetings of the licensing subcommittee which have taken place since the last meeting of the committee. So we have finished maybe 1 meetings. How many meetings since the last? How many meetings? 6, thank you. Oh, 15. Licensing there will be. Thank you. Yep, so we had 6 meetings. Any comments from councillors on the meetings and the outcomes of these meetings? Okay, thank you very much. Well, that being the last item on the agenda, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you for your time, councillors.